Ooh, welcome back to Red Panda of Destiny, here for another episode of Show of the Year. We're, of course, doing 2019 today with a spot of Rick and Morty. Bit of a weird situation we have going with Rick and Morty. We are only doing Season 2 and Season 4 because the other seasons got beat out by the likes of Top Gear and American Vandal. So we'll just have to live with Season 2 and 4. And it got beat out for Show of the Decade by American Vandal again. So we won't be covering Season 1, and Season 3. But I do want to mention before we start that there is these little tiddly things called the non-canonical adventures, which are claymation. So let's, with little clay figurines, and then you sort of move them around. Interesting choice. Been watching too many Wallace and Gromit cartoons, or I guess they're not cartoons if they're claymated, whatever. But anyway, in 2019, they did a bunch of these. I think it was like the second run of them, and they're just little tiny 17-second claymations, just for Adult Swim. Just those little title card animations. And the ones that they did in 2019 were Beetlejuice, The Blair Witch Project, Evil Dead 2, Hellraiser, Home Alone, Jaws, Predator, Reservoir Dogs, Terminator 2, and Videodrome. We're just going to give an aggregate positive to all of those. So that's just a positive for the whole season. And that brings us on to today's episode, which is Edge of Tomorty. Rick, die, repeat. Of course, a play on the Tom Cruise movie Edge of Tomorrow, which was also called Live, Die, Repeat, depending on where you live. I don't understand. Sometimes it's weird with those things, that they make it worse or they make it better. In this case, I think it's just sort of okay. Like, neither one's really the better one. But anyway, the first thing I wanted to talk about was a little snippet at the beginning. Ooh, worth noting, spoilers will be everywhere. Don't watch this unless you have watched all of Rick and Morty. There might be spoilers for past seasons as well. There won't be spoilers for future seasons because they're not out yet. But the first little gag I wanted to put in here that I found kind of funny is the beginning of the episode is all about Jessica has posted the thing about a necklace she got from her grandmother, and there's a selfie that she posted that she took at the funeral. Weird. But as Rick and Morty leave for their adventure, there's this great bit where Summer dumps all her syrup on top of her dad's pancakes, and their mom is like, Summer, stop raising your dad's cholesterol so you can take hot funeral selfies. It's just a little funny thing there. Then Rick and Morty, of course, go off on their adventure, which brings us to positive number 2, which is the fun sci-fi element of today's episode, which is death crystals, which are positive instead of negative. Sort of. It's relative. But the idea of the death crystals is if you were holding a death crystal or it's touching you or something, you can see how you're going to die based on your current trajectory. And obviously, just any little decision will change your trajectory. So it's not very useful unless you're in a life and death situation, which Rick's example is these, I guess, crystal hunters show up, and he's like, it shows you when the other guy's reloading. So I don't understand that, though, because you're standing there. I guess it's because you're thinking about coming out of cover. Probably not best to think about this too much. But of course, Morty picks up a crystal, and it shows him dying with Jessica as an old man, and he's like, must follow Jessica. So he just starts walking in this weird, janky path, following so that it shows that death instead of all the other random deaths that show up. Great visual, by the way, because it's kind of like crystallized. It's got one in the center and then a bunch of different ones around the outside, except when he's got the correct one that he's going for. So that becomes kind of interesting. And then he convinces Rick to drive, and they fly a little janky. And Rick figures it out because he's Rick and he's a genius. And then they fight with for control of the ship, and then they crash. And Rick dies. Yep, short season. No, I'm just kidding. And then a sort of holographic Rick shows up, who is apparently a crisis detection and correction hologram. Who I guess exists to tell Morty what to do and how to clone Rick so he can be resurrected. Which is why Rick is so powerful, because he just has some sort of backup plan that even if he dies, no matter how he dies, he still comes back. And then they make a couple little jipes about holophobia. He's like calling people who are not holographic real is holophobic, and then he accidentally uses the word solid, sort of no pun intended situation. I just thought that was kind of funny. And then we cut to Rick waking up in a cloning vat in Rick's basement. Not his basement, someone else's basement. Apparently he had destroyed his hologram gone. But he comes out, and then there's this guy. There's a regular-looking Rick, human Rick, and he's like, "Oh, no problem. It's okay. I didn't." And then it's like, "You're down with fascist regimes, right?" And the regular Rick is like, "Yes." He's like, "That didn't sound very..." Oh, what's the word for that? Genuine? So I forget how Rick dies, but I think he gets shot. He dies. That's the end of it. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. What happens is Fascist Morty shows up, shoots Fascist Rick, and then Fascist Morty takes Rick on an adventure at gunpoint. And he's like, "I want to go on an adventure. Take me on an adventure." Which doesn't really work because there's nothing actually to do. But he does like Mises, Mr. Mises, so they pull out a Mises box, hit the box, and Rick tells him to kill Fascist Morty, and then they all fly out of the spaceship and die. So we move on to another clone, this time a Shrimp Rick clone, which leads to the fun line, "Oh, thank God you're just shrimps and not fascists." And then it cuts to him being chased by Nazis, basically, or fascists. Nazis are just... It's funny how the fascists are just Nazis, basically, but fascist is a more general term. So that's the end of clone of fascist shrimp Rick. Yes. And then he goes into another one, and he's in a teddy bear this time. And the teddy bear comes out in his bathrobe, and he's like, "Issus fascistus?" And Rick just kills himself. He's like, "Not this again." But see, what I wonder, maybe that Rick wasn't actually a fascist. Maybe he just had a bunch of fascists keep spawning in his clone vat. So he was expecting it to be a fascist, and he was hoping it wasn't. It's a fun thought there. But I do like the way the Rick reacts. I'm guessing it's Pig Latin or something along those lines. It might be German, but just a funny little jibe. But then we go back to Morty, who has taken to avoiding Jessica because the crystal tells him to. And then he becomes what I have termed Morty of Doom. And he basically just, causes the police to come and the National Guard to come. And then he gets arrested on purpose. And then he gets tried, but he is... I'm guessing this is random chance based on the crystal, obviously. that he manages to say things that sounds like the dead husband of the judge is talking to him, and then she lets him go. Yeah, it's all sorts of nonsense, but it's like he just has to just say exactly the right words that the crystal tells him to, and everything will be fine because he can see that pathway, which is interesting. And then we get Rick again, spawning this time into a wasp Rick. And he presumes that the wasp Rick is a fascist and is incorrect. He's actually quite a nice guy, even though wasps eat their prey alive, and if they don't, they lay their eggs in their prey's eyeballs. Yeah, real nice people. And then they're eating the teacher, who is in this universe a giant caterpillar, I think. Yeah, pretty nasty. But that's having on it. It's funny because Rick's like, wow, this family's way better than mine because they don't get along. It's very strange. But then we go back to Morty again, and he becomes the Tree of Morty. He just sits himself still, and he can see Jessica, and that's it. It's like, I think this is when you start to realize that he is really just wasting his life with just seeing that. It's like that movie Click, where he has the remote and he keeps skipping things he doesn't like, to the point where he's skipped basically his whole life. He's missed everything. I mean, I think he goes through that movie probably in like less than a month, just because he skips everything. He's like, well, I don't want to do this. 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 So he misses everything. The moral is clear. Live in the moment. Anyway, then Wasp Clone Rick and regular Wasp Rick. No, hang on. That's confusing. Whatever. The Wasp Ricks show up at the Tree of Morty, along with the holographic Rick. That's important. Because he'd shown up in regular Rick's garage, and then he tells them where Morty is, and they go, Morty. And they get Morty out of the tree pretty fast and get the crystal off of him, and then he kind of freaks out because I don't know how I'm gonna die. And there's a great sort of growl when they come into the tree that I do like. It's kind of a pissed off insect kind of growl. Sounds like a boss fight is starting, but obviously not. Not that boss fight anyway. But then the tree goo stuff, which must be something from Rick's garage, gets on the hollow Rick, and the hollow Rick becomes solid, and then he turns into a bit of a dick for about 5 seconds before the wasp Rick stings him in the eye, and then his head explodes, and all these wasps fly out. Yeah, pretty gruesome. But that pretty much resolved the problem. I love how that fight was over in 5 seconds. And that's the episode. Although they do have a little bit of a tiff with, I forget people's names. Summer. Because they start talking about Rick and Morty forever, Rick and Morty for 100 years, and all this nonsense. And then Summer shows up in the background and starts going, and then Rick's like, I record everything, right? And she's like, ah. So they play it back, and she was saying all this, basically, the whole gay joke thing that's kind of old hat, but whatever. And then the episode ends. And obviously, we do credits, after credit sequence, and the after credit sequence is interesting. And it's basically Jessica saying that she wants to become a hospice nurse, and she's like, I'm gonna say I love you and the name on their name tag, and Morty's like, oh, it's kind of funny. It's like, yes, he would have died with Jessica, but he would not have lived with Jessica. Lesson learned. But yeah, that's been our first coverage of a Rick and Morty episode. We'll be back next week for The Old Man and the Seat.